Captain Vrel had been raiding commercial vessels for 15 cycles, and he prided himself on his ability to spot easy prey. The small freighter drifting through the outer Kanda route practically screamed desperation. Outdated hull plating, minimal defensive capabilities, and according to their scanners, a crew complement of exactly one. "This is it, boys," Vrel announced to his crew, his three eyes gleaming with predatory satisfaction. "This is what we in the business call a gift from the void." His second-in-command, Krieg, clicked his mandibles together in what passed for laughter among his species. Krieg was a Vexillian, all crystalline exoskeleton and spider-like limbs, and he had the annoying habit of being right about easy scores. "Human registration," he chittered, reviewing the manifest data. "Cargo freighter. They barely discovered faster-than-light travel 2 of their generations ago. Probably still think space pirates are a myth." The rest of the Crimson Fang crew gathered around the view screen. There was Mako, a gelatinous Florn who served as their weapons specialist despite having no bones. There was Tix and Tox, twin Randali who shared one brain between 2 bodies and handled navigation. And there was Greld, who nobody really liked, but he was excellent at cutting through bulkheads. "Humans," Varel mused, pulling up what little information the galactic databases had on them. Soft-skinned. No natural armor. No venom. No claws. They don't even have a proper threat display. He zoomed in on an image of a human smiling. "Look at this. They show their teeth as a sign of friendliness. What kind of Death World predator does that?" "The stupid kind," Krieg offered helpfully. "Exactly." Vrel initiated the boarding sequence. Their ship, the Widow's Bite, latched onto the human freighter with practiced efficiency. "Remember, we want this quick and clean. Get the cargo codes, transfer everything valuable, and leave them alive to tell other soft species what happens when you travel without proper security." The airlock hissed open. The Crimson Fang crew poured into the human ship, weapons drawn, ready for the usual screaming and begging that made this job so satisfying. Instead, they found one human sitting in the cargo bay, eating a sandwich. He looked up at them with the expression of someone who had just been interrupted during a particularly boring documentary. The human was medium-sized by his species standards, with brown hair that looked like it hadn't seen a comb in weeks, and wearing a jumpsuit that had rusty dividends stitched across the chest. He chewed slowly, swallowed, and then said, "You guys picked the wrong Tuesday." Vrel blinked all 3 eyes in sequence, which was his species equivalent of a confused doublet. "I what?" "Tuesday," the human repeated, taking another bite of his sandwich. "It's Tuesday. I've had the worst week. The climate regulator broke on Monday. I've got a shipment of frozen protein bars that are currently thawing in hold. See, I just got a message from my ex-wife's lawyer about child support adjustments. And this sandwich." He held it up like it was personally offensive. "This sandwich has been in the cooler for 6 days, and it tastes like cardboard." Krieg stepped forward, looming over the human with all 8 limbs spread wide in an intimidation display that had made hardened smugglers weep. "Human, you will provide access codes to your cargo manifest immediately, or we will begin removing your appendages in alphabetical order." The human, whose name Bodge read Marcus Webb, looked Krieg up and down with the sort of expression usually reserved for people who had just stepped in something unpleasant. "Alphabetical order," Marcus said. "So what? You'd start with my ankles?" "That's not even how anatomy works." And then Marcus headbutted him. The sound of crystalline exoskeleton cracking echoed through the cargo bay like a wine glass shattering in a cathedral. Krieg staggered backward, a spiderweb of fractures spreading across his facial structure, making a noise that can only be described as a whistling scream. There was a moment of absolute silence where the entire Crimson Fang crew stood frozen, trying to process what had just happened. In 15 cycles of raiding, Vrel had never seen prey attack first. It violated every principle of predator-prey dynamics that existed across the known galaxy. Marcus finished his sandwich, wadded up the wrapper, and tossed it into a nearby recycling chute. "Anyone else want to talk about removing appendages? Because I've got 2 fists and a really bad attitude. And honestly, at this point, violence sounds therapeutic." Mako raised one of his gelatinous suit. "Captain, permission to..." He did unfinish the sentence because Marcus had grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall. and slammed it into Mako's central mast with enough force to send the Florn splattering across 3 separate bulkheads. Florns didn't have vital organs in the traditional sense, but they could be disrupted, and Mako was now very disrupted. "Oh, that's not good," Marcus observed, looking at the gelatinous residue on the extinguisher. "That's going to be annoying to clean." Growl charged forward with a roar, which was a mistake because Marcus swung the extinguisher again, this time activating it mid. Foam exploded outward, filling the cargo bay with white clouds and reducing visibility to approximately 0. Rel heard rather than saw what happened next. There was a clang, a yelp, the distinct sound of someone being hit with a wrench. Another clang. Someone, probably Tix or Tox, shouted something about retreating to the ship. A third clang, followed by a creative string of cursing in what Varel assumed was the human language called English. When the foam settled, 3 members of Rel's crew were unconscious. Krieg was still clutching his face. Mako was slowly recongealing in a corner, and Marcus was standing in the middle of the cargo bay, holding a plasma, wrenched like a club and breathing only slightly harder than when they first arrived. "Here's the thing about humans," Marcus said, pointing the wrench at Rel. "We don't have threat assessment instincts like you guys do. When a normal species sees a dozen armed pirates, they think, 'Oh no, I'm outnumbered. I should surrender.' When a human sees a dozen armed pirates, we think, 'Okay, that's a problem. But what if I hit them with stuff until it stops being a problem?'" Rel raised his primary hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Let's everyone just calm down and calm down." Marcus laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. "You boarded my ship. You threatened to remove my appendages in alphabetical order, which, again, makes no sense. You interrupted my sandwich. And you know what the worst part is?" "What?" Vrel whispered. "You're not even the first raiders to try this month. You're number 5. 5 times. I'm a cargo hauler. I transport protein bars and industrial cleaning supplies. Do you know how boring my job is supposed to be?" Krieg, still recovering, managed to whistle out. "How are you this aggressive? Your species has no natural weapons." Marcus looked down at the wrench in his hand, then back at Krieg. "Yeah, that's why we invented weapons. And apparently, you guys never learned the most important rule about humans." He smiled, showing his teeth, which Varel now realized was absolutely not a friendly gesture. "We're persistence predators. We don't give up. We don't back down. We just keep going until either we win or we die. And frankly, the way my week's been going, I'm not picky about which one happens first." Tix or Tox, Varel couldn't tell which, made a break for the airlock. Marcus threw the wrench. It sailed through the air with surprising accuracy and hit the control panel next to the boarding tube, which sparked, flickered, and then died completely. "Oops," Marcus said, not sounding sorry at all. "Looks like that door's locked now. Guess you guys are stuck here with me." He cracked his knuckles, which produced an unsettling popping sound. "So, who wants to go next? Anyone? No volunteers? That's disappointing. I was just starting to have fun." Vrel realized, with slowly dawning horror, that they weren't in a raiding situation anymore. They were trapped on a ship with an angry human who had absolutely nothing to lose, and apparently no sense of self. "This," Vrel muttered, "is not how the manual said this would go." Vrel held up all 4 of his hands in surrender, which was the most emphatic, peaceful gesture his species could manage. "Human, please. We can discuss terms. We'll leave peacefully. No harm. No foul. As I believe your species says." Marcus leaned against a cargo crate, arms crossed, looking at Vrel like he was a particularly slow student. "Oh, now you want to talk. Funny how that works. 10 minutes ago it was all, 'Give us your cargo codes, or we'll remove your appendages.' Now it's, 'Please, let's discuss terms.' What changed, exactly?" "You fractured Krieg's face, liquefied Mako, and knocked out 3 of my crew," Vrel said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Yeah? Well, you interrupted my sandwich." Marcus pushed off from the crate and walked over to a control panel. "Also, here's something fun. See this blinking light? That's the de-stress beacon I activated about 30 seconds after you latched onto my ship. Galactic Commerce Enforcement is probably already on their way. Krieg's mandibles clicked weakly. You're bluffing, am I? Marcus pulled up a screen showing a navigation display. And see? This is your boarding tube connection, which I've now locked from my side using your own equipment. So even if you wanted to run back to your ship, you can't. Not without cutting through, which would take, about 45 minutes, with proper tools. The remaining conscious members of the Crimson Fang crew exchanged worried looks. Greld, who had recovered enough to stand, growled, "You've trapped yourself in here with us." "No," Marcus corrected. "I've trapped you in here with me. There's a difference. See, I know every corner of this ship. I know where the emergency bulkhead controls are. I know which ventilation shafts are big enough to crawl through. I know where I keep my spare tools." He smiled, that terrible tooth-showing smile again. "And most importantly, I've been raided 4 times this year. You know what that means?" "What?" Vrel asked, dreading the answer. "It means I've had practice." Marcus walked over to a wall panel and pulled out what looked like a data pad. "Let me tell you a story about humans and galactic society. We're new, right? Only been in the starfaring community for about 60 years. Most species look at us and think, oh, how cute. The hairless apes figured out fusion drives, taithing we. Re-easy targets, because we do want to have scales, or exoskeletons, or acid blood, or any of the fun biological weapons every other species seems to have." He pulled up images on the datapad, projecting them onto the cargo bay wall. So raiders, smugglers, pirates, they all think, let's go rob some humans. They're probably pushovers, and then they meet humans. Real humans. The kind of humans who evolved on a death world where literally everything was trying to kill us. So we developed this really annoying survival trait. "What trait?" Vrel asked, genuinely curious now, despite his fear. "Spite." Marcus advanced the images. They showed various raider crews, all looking traumatized. Pure, unfiltered, weaponized spite. When a human gets backed into a corner, we don't think about survival odds. We don't calculate escape routes. We think, how do I make sure the thing that cornered me regrets every decision that led to this moment? He zoomed in on one image showing a raider crew huddled in a medical bay. This crew tried to raid a human colony transport 6 months ago. The humans had no weapons. None. You know what they did? They vented sections of the ship to vacuum, then used magnetic boots to walk around on the outside of the hull while the raiders were floating around inside. Helpless. Then the humans came back in, tied them up, and left them for the authorities. Another image. This crew attacked a human medical frigate. The humans sedated them, performed minor cosmetic surgeries on them while they were unconscious, then left them to wake up with temporary tattoos that said I lost a fight to human doctors. It took weeks to remove. Krieg made a whimpering sound. "You're starting to understand," Marcus said. "Humans don't fight to win. We fight to traumatize. We want you to wake up in the middle of your sleep cycle, covered in whatever you sweat. Remembering the time you thought raiding a human ship would be easy money?" Vrel's voice came out smaller than he intended. "What do you want from us?" "Oh, now we're asking the right questions." Marcus began advancing through the cargo bay. Not aggressive, just purposeful. "I want you to run. I want you to go back to whatever pirate station you call home. And I want you to tell everyone the story of the time you raided Marcus Webb's cargo freighter. I want you to make it sound scary. I want you to embellish, add some details about how I am 7 feet tall, and have cybernetic implants and can see in the dark. But you're not 7 feet tall," Tix or Tox pointed out. "Do I look like I care about accuracy?" Marcus snapped. "The point is, I want every raider between here and the core worlds to hear about this, and think, you know what? Maybe I'll raid literally anyone else. Maybe those protein bars aren't worth it." He stopped in front of Vrel. "Because here's the thing, Captain. I'm tired. I'm so tired of being raided. I'm tired of filing insurance claims. I'm tired of explaining to my company why I'm late on deliveries. I'm tired of having to repair hull damage. So I'm not going to kill you. I'm not even going to hurt you. beyond what I've already done. Marcus leaned in close. I'm going to make you famous. You're going to be the cautionary tale. The example. The reason other raiders think twice before hitting a human ship. Somewhere in the distance, alarms began to blare. Marcus checked his datapad. Oh, good. That'll be the authorities. Right on time. They're usually pretty punctual in this sector. Varel felt something he hadn't felt in 15 cycles of raiding. Pure, existential regret. We should have just raided the Xanthic mining barge. Yes, Marcus agreed. Yes, you absolutely should have. Varel and his crew were now corralled in the cargo bay, sitting on the floor with their hands, paws, and various appendages visible. Marcus had perched himself on a cargo crate, still holding the plasma wrench, looking like the universe's most exhausted security guard. I want you all to understand something, Marcus began, his tone taking on the quality of a disappointed teacher. This isn't personal. I don't hate you. I don't even know you. But I need you to understand what you're dealing with when you raid human ships. He pulled up his datapad again and started scrolling through files. Humans built their entire civilization on bad ideas that worked. We looked at mountains and said, what if we lived on top of those? We looked at oceans and said, what if we went under those? We looked at the sky and said, what if we flew through that in metal tubes filled with explosive fuel? Every single advancement in human history is someone saying, that's impossible, and a human responding, watch me. Krieg had recovered enough to speak, though his voice came out cracked and whistling through his fractured faceplates. What does that have to do with raiding? Everything. Marcus jumped down from the crate with surprising energy for someone who just fought off a dozen pirates, because when you raid a human, you're not just fighting a person. You're fighting thousands of years of evolutionary stuff. You're fighting a species that looked at every predator on our planet and said, no, actually, we're going to domesticate you, eat you, or make you extinct. You were fighting a species that experienced the Black Death and responded by inventing modern medicine out of spite. You're fighting a species that went to the moon because we got into a political argument. He was pacing now, working himself up. Do you know what happens when you tell a human something is impossible? We make it possible out of pure pettiness. Do you know what happens when you threaten a human? We don't freeze up or run away. We get creative. Dangerously creative. The kind of creative that makes us fashion weapons out of whatever is nearby and develop. Elaborate revenge schemes that last for months. Varel was starting to see where this was going. You've been planning this. All of these. Oh, absolutely. Marcus pulled up another set of files, these ones showing news articles from various galactic networks. Let me read you some headlines. Raider crew surrenders after encountering unusually aggressive human merchant. That was the first time I got raided 8 months ago. I didn't know what I was doing. I just panicked and started throwing cargo containers. Turns out, in zero gravity, a 100-pound box moving at speed can do some damage. He scrolled to the next article. Human cargo captain holds pirates at bay with kitchen appliances. That was raid number 2. I'd just installed a new galley, and I may have overreacted when they came through the airlock. In my defense, a heated pan is a very effective weapon when applied with enthusiasm. Another article. Raider claims human fought like a ferrograph. That was number 3. I'd been awake for 36 hours due to a navigation computer malfunction. I was running on caffeine and anger, and they made the mistake of waking me up. I genuinely don't remember most of that encounter, but apparently, I bit someone. You bit someone? Greld asked, horrified. I was very tired. Marcus protested. And again, no natural weapons, so we work with what we have. He pulled up the final article. Human freighter captain implements counter-piracy protocol, traumatizes entire raider crew. That was last month. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with isolated incidents. This was a pattern. Raiders were targeting human ships because they thought we were easy marks, so I decided to change the narrative. Marcus turned to face his captive audience. Every single one of these encounters, I made sure to record. I made sure to file detailed reports with the Commerce Enforcement. I made sure the raiders survived and could tell their stories. And do you know what happened? Tix and Tox shook their shared heads in unison. Word started to spread. Raider networks began talking about humans, not as easy targets, but as something else. Something unpredictable. Something that costs more trouble than it's worth. Casualties minimal, they said, but psychological damage extensive, and that's exactly what I wanted. He held up his datapad, showing it was recording. Which brings us to you lovely individuals. Smile for the camera. The Crimson Fang crew collectively groaned. This recording is going to every enforcement agency, every commerce guild, and most importantly, every Raider network I can find. You're going to be famous. You're going to be the crew that got absolutely humiliated by a cargo hauler with a wrench and a bad attitude. Your faces are going to be attached to the warning. This is what happens when you raid humans. Vrel slumped against the bulkhead. You're making examples of us. Finally, someone gets it. Marcus snapped his fingers. Yes. Examples, because I can't be everywhere, and I can't protect every human ship out here, but I can make sure that when raiders are planning their next score, when they're looking at potential targets, they see a human ship and think, you know what, the protein bars aren't worth it. Let's go rob the Xanthic mining barge instead. Krieg whistled sadly. The Xanthics have actual security. Then I guess you should have thought about that before you boarded the Rusty Dividend. Marcus checked his datapad. Enforcement is about 2 minutes out. By the way, they're going to want statements. I'm going to give them very detailed statements. With video evidence and diagrams. I'm very thorough. What happens to us? Vrel asked. Marcus smiled, and for the first time, it looked almost genuine. Oh, you're going to wish I'd just killed you, because what's about to happen is so much worse than death. What could be worse than death? Grell demanded. Paperwork, Marcus said. So much paperwork. The Galactic Commerce Enforcement ship arrived with all the dramatic flair of a tax audit, which was to say, none at all. 2 enforcement officers boarded the Rusty Dividend, took one look at the cargo bay full of dejected pirates and one triumphant human, and immediately called for backup to process the paperwork. Officer Kelth was a Vermarian, a species known for their bureaucratic efficiency and complete lack of humor. Her partner, Officer Jen Park, was human, which made things significantly more interesting. Marcus, Officer Park said, walking into the cargo bay with a datapad and an expression of deep resignation. Please tell me you didn't do what I think you did. That depends, Marcus replied cheerfully. What do you think I did? Engaged in violent resistance, held prisoners against their will, and created a massive amount of paperwork for me to file. Then yes, I did exactly what you think I did. Officer Park pinched the bridge of her nose. Marcus, we've talked about this. When raiders board your ship, you're supposed to comply. Let them take the cargo and file an insurance claim. That's the standard procedure. Yeah, well, standard procedure wasn't working. I filed 6 insurance claims this year alone. My premiums are through the roof. It's cheaper to just fight them off and traumatize them. Marcus pulled up his datapad. Besides, I have a better solution. I'm not filing assault charges. Officer Kelth looked up from her documentation, all 3 of her eye stalks swiveling in confusion. You're not, but these raiders clearly boarded your vessel with intent to steal your cargo. You have legal grounds for prosecution. Oh, I'm not interested in prosecution. Marcus's smile was the smile of someone who discovered a loophole and planned to exploit it mercilessly. I'm interested in compensation. I'm filing a civil claim for damages, emotional distress, and wasted resources. It's the cost of the therapy sessions I'm going to need after this traumatic event. Also, I'm charging for the sandwich you interrupted. That's 12 credits. And the damaged boarding equipment you used to forcibly enter my ship. That's 8,000 credits to repair the airlock seals. Oh, and there's a consultation fee. Consultation fee, Krieg whispered, his fractured face making the words sound like escaping steam. For educating you about human temperament, Marcus said. I figure my time is worth about 200 credits an hour, and this little lesson took approximately 3 hours, if you count prep time. So that's 600 credits right there, plus materials. He gestured to the bent plasma wrench. That wrench was brand new. 20 credits. Officer Kelth was reading through the invoice with growing appreciation. This is technically legal under Galactic Commerce Code. Section 47, subsection Dose, paragraph 8. Victims of raiding attempts have the right to seek compensation for damages both material and psychological. I know, Marcus said smugly. I looked it up after the third time I got raided. Turns out the galactic legal system is very sympathetic to merchants who've been traumatized by pirates. Pharrell looked at the total at the bottom of the invoice and made a sound like a deflating balloon. We don't have 58,632 credits. Then I guess you'll be setting up a payment plan, Marcus said. I accept installments. I'm not unreasonable. Grelt stood up, anger overriding his fear. You can't do this. You assaulted us. You're the one who should be paying damages. Officer Park shook her head. Actually, Marcus is well within his rights. You boarded his vessel with intent to commit piracy. He defended himself and his property. The fact that he chose not to kill you is honestly showing remarkable restraint for a human in a high-stress situation. Remarkable restraint? Grelt sputtered. He fractured Krieg's face. You threatened to remove his appendages in alphabetical order, Officer Park pointed out. In human courts, that would be considered a credible threat of torture. Marcus could have legally done a lot worse. Marcus pulled out his datapad again. Oh, and before I forget, there's one more thing. He walked over to the crew, pulled out a portable camera, and set it up on a tripod. I need you all to gather together right here. Why? Rel asked suspiciously. Photo opportunity. For the invoice documentation, and also for my collection. 5 minutes later, the Crimson Fang crew was arranged in a semicircle looking absolutely miserable. While Marco stood in the center holding a physical sign he'd printed out that read, I raided a human freighter, and all I got was this drama and a bill. The camera flashed. Marcus reviewed the photo, nodded in satisfaction, and sent it to his datapad. Perfect. This is going in my insurance file, my legal documentation, and also I'm making it my screensaver. Krieg, his voice barely a whisper through his damaged face, asked the question they were all thinking. Why didn't you just kill us? Marcus looked at him with something that might have been sympathy if it was unmixed with so much satisfaction. Because dead raiders don't tell stories, and I need you to tell all the stories. Every single one of them. I need you to go back to whatever station you came from, and tell everyone about the human who did unjust beat you, but made you pay for the privilege of being beaten. I need you to tell them that raiding humans isn't just dangerous, it's expensive and humiliating. He walked over to the airlock controls. Your ship is still attached. Your crew is intact. You're going to limp home. File this invoice with whatever accounting system pirates use and spend the next year making payments on your worst decision. And every time you make a payment, you're going to remember this day. You're going to remember that humans don't just fight back. We make you regret the fight. The airlock opened. The Crimson Fang crew shuffled out slowly, defeated, traumatized, and significantly poorer than when they'd arrived. As their ship detached and limped away into the void, Officer Park stood next to Marcus, watching them go. You know you're absolutely insane, right? Yeah, Marcus agreed. But I'm insane. With an invoice. That's the best kind. 6 months later, the fallout from the Rusty Dividend incident had spread across raider networks like a particularly aggressive computer virus. The photo of the Crimson Fang crew had become the single most shared image in pirate communication channels. It had been turned into a meme. There were variations where digital artists had added crying emojis and sad music notes. Someone had created an entire song about it that was genuinely catchy and deeply humiliating. The chorus roughly translated to "We thought we'd raid 4 credits, but all we got was debt and regret." Captain Vrel had become something of an unwilling celebrity. His crew had scattered to other vessels, none of them willing to work with him anymore. Krieg had gotten reconstructive surgery on his face, but refused to talk about how he'd gotten the damage in the first place. Mako had changed his name and moved to a different sector entirely. Raider Networks had implemented a new classification system for potential targets. The scale went from level 1, completely safe. Probably won't even notice you're robbing them, to level 5, approach with extreme caution. Possible casualties. Human ships were now classified as level 7. Nobody knew there wasn't supposed to be a level 7. The Raiders had invented it specifically for humans. The new protocol in Raider training, such as it was, included an entire section on humans. It covered human psychology, human unpredictability, and human tendency to make poor tactical decisions that somehow work out in their favor through sheer aggression and improvisation. There was a saying now, passed around in hushed tones in the darker corners of space stations. Never raid a human. They don't fight like they want to win. They fight like they want you to remember. Marcus Webb, for his part, was having the most peaceful 6 months of his cargo hauling career. He'd completed 17 runs without a single raid attempt. Ships that had been tracked as potential raider vessels would get within scanning range of the Rusty Dividend, take one look at the registration, and immediately change course. On one memorable occasion, Marcus had received an actual apology via long-range communication from a raider crew that had accidentally locked onto his ship's signature. The message had read, "Sorry, wrong ship. Our mistake. Please don't hurt us." Marcus had replied with a simple, "Have a nice day." The raider ship had jumped to FTL speed so fast, they'd probably damaged their engines. Currently, Marcus was on approach to Station 7, his original destination from 6 months ago, finally delivering those protein bars. They'd been replaced 3 times by now because they kept thawing, but that was just the nature of cargo hauling. His communication console beeped, multiple priority warnings from nearby freighters. All ships be advised, raider activity reported in sectors 7 through 12. 3 vessels confirmed. Approach with caution and consider alternative routes. Marcus didn't change course. He didn't even slow down. Somewhere in the distance, on a raider ship called the Void's Fortune, a young and particularly stupid captain named Rezik was reviewing potential targets with his crew. "What about that one?" his navigator asked, highlighting a freighter on the scanner. Small, minimal weapons. Single crew member. Rezik zoomed in on the identification signature. His blood, or whatever his species had instead of blood, ran cold. "That's the Rusty Dividend." The bridge went silent. "No," his weapons officer said. No, that's the ship." "What ship?" the navigator asked. Was new." The weapons officer pulled up a file. The file contained one photo and several paragraphs of text. But really, the photo said everything that needed to be said. The Crimson Fang crew, looking absolutely destroyed, standing around a human holding a sign about trauma and bills. Below the photo was a single line of text that had been added by multiple raider networks, each one confirming the information. "This human has been raided 7 times. Crew survival rate, 100%. Crew dignity survival rate, 0%. Crew financial stability, -30%. Do not engage. Seriously. We're not kidding. It's not worth it." There was additional commentaries that have been added over time. "He bills you for the privilege of beating you up. He bills you for therapy. He bills you for sandwiches. He bills you for educational services. This is worse than actual police." The navigator stared at the screen. "So, what do we do?" Rezik didn't even hesitate. "Literally anything else. Rub a bun. Steal from a military convoy. Raid a Xanthic mining barge with full security. I don't care. But we are not, under any circumstances, engaging that ship." "The Xanthics have actual security," someone pointed out. "Good. I like actual security." "Actual security shoots you, and you die. This human makes you live with what you've done and also pay for it. That's so much worse." The Void's Fortune changed course so aggressively that several crew members fell over. On the Rusty Dividend, Marcus was completely unaware of the panic he'd caused. He was eating another sandwich, This one thankfully fresh, and listening to a podcast about historical Earth military tactics. The episode was about psychological warfare. Huh, Marcus said to himself, taking another bite. I should take notes. His communication console beeped again. Station 7, traffic control. Rusty Dividend, you're cleared for docking at Bay 7. Welcome back, Captain Webb. We heard about your, adventures. The station master wants to buy you a drink. Tell him I'll take him up on that, Marcus replied. But I'm charging for this story. It's a good story, and good stories are worth money. There was laughter from the other end. You humans are something else. Yeah, Marcus agreed, finishing his sandwich in peace. Yeah, we really are. And that was how humanity solved their piracy problem. Without firing a single shot. Well, mostly without firing shots. Marcus had used a nail gun at one point during raid number 4, but in his defense, it was technically a construction tool, not a weapon, so it didn't count. The Rusty Dividend docked smoothly at Station 7. Marcus gathered his delivering manifest, grabbed his jacket, and prepared to finally complete this job that had started 6 months ago. As he walked down the boarding ramp, he passed a group of alien merchants who were reviewing security protocols on their data pads. One of them, a nervous-looking Rendali, was reading aloud. It says here that the most effective anti-piracy measure available to independent merchants is to broadcast human distress signals near your ship to make raiders think twice about approaching. His companion, the more skeptical Florn, wobbled dismissively. That can't possibly work. It does, Marcus called over his shoulder as he walked past. I get royalties every time someone uses my recorded distress signals. It's become a nice side income. The merchant stared after him. Was that ... double quotes? The Rendali started. Marcus Webb. The Florin finished, his gelatinous form rippling with what might have been awe or terror. That was Marcus Webb. Marcus smiled to himself and kept walking. His ex-wife's lawyer wanted to renegotiate child support. His ship still needed a new climate regulator. He had 17 more deliveries scheduled for this month. Life was complicated and expensive and frequently annoying, but at least nobody was trying to raid him anymore. And honestly, that made everything else a little bit easier to deal with. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, on a secured raider communication channel, a new message was being circulated. It was simple, direct, and had been endorsed by every major pirate organization in 3 sectors regarding human targets. Don't. Just don't. We know they look easy. They're not. We know they seem unarmed. They're not. We know you think you're different, that you're smarter, that you can succeed where others failed. You're not, and you won't. The protein bars are not worth it. The cleaning supplies are not worth it. Your dignity is worth more than whatever's in their cargo hold. Find literally any other target. This message brought to you by the Crimson Fang Crew Memorial Fund for raiders who made poor life choices. Below the message was the photo. Always the photo. And every raider who saw it made the same decision Marcus had hoped they would make. They decided to be somewhere else. And